Welcome to Retrain Your Thinking with Pastor Johnny, where you will learn to enlighten your mindset and change your world. Today, I have two wonderful guests with me, a father and son. Reverend John Warren is with me again, and his son, Xavier Warren. Welcome.
Thank you,
To,
Pastor Johnny.
yes. We're talking today about a different project. It's different because many cities are not doing it. And we're going to let Reverend Warren, who is the author of this project, introduce it by telling us what the Legacy of East Cleburne is all about. And then Xavier Warren, who was one of the speakers for this project, will talk more about his role in the Legacy of East Cleburne project and as growing up in East Cleburne and becoming a member of the NFL. So, Reverend Warren, tell us a little bit about what the Legacy of East Cleburne is about and how it got started.
The Legacy of East Cleburne is my effort to expose, uh, to enlighten the citizens of Cleburne concerning the people who graduated from Booker T. Washington High School. All of my life, let me start this way. I entered Booker T. Washington High School when I was 5 years old. And the notion was there in Cleveland that the education was so-so, you know, it was not great. But we had very good teachers, and they instilled in us a work ethic and high esteem. And so I wanted the citizens in Cleveland to know that in spite of how we were being treated in terms of educational equipment, uh, we 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 went on to do great things in not only in Cleveland but also in America. And for an example, just let me give you a scenario of what occurred on any given morning in the school. The first thing we did, we said that we had the Lord's Prayer. Then we sang the national anthem, and then the Negro national anthem. And our teachers taught us to be loyal to the nation. And we had very, very good teachers. And our equipment, some of our books that we received, the pages were torn out of them, and just just very shoddy equipment. Uh, there was no science equipment or anything like that. No science lab or anything like that. But yet and still, I want to reiterate that we had very good teachers, and they were very knowledgeable in their teaching method.
And so Booker T. Washington then was an all-black school, like
Yes.
in the day, those days, most or if not all cities and communities had an all-black school.
Yeah, Booker T. Washington opened in 1909 and it closed in 1965, uh, so called integration. Uh, from 1909 to that point, our school was burned down 3 times. And when it was burned down, we had to go to attend school in the local churches. And we just had to make do with what we had, but yet and still education occurred.
So when it was burned down, there was a white high school,
That's right.
but the black students couldn't go
Couldn't
there.
go to.
You had to go to the local
That's
churches.
right.
My goodness. Well, X, tell me, and I'll call you X, so we know your name's
Okay.
Xavier. But so you didn't attend Booker T because it was already closed when you got to high school. So where did you go to high school?
Well, just to go backwards just a little bit, I did not attend Booker T. Washington High School physically, but I attended Booker T. spiritually. I have
Yes.
two parents who went to Booker T, and some of the principles that were taught at Booker T were also taught in my home.
All right.
So I went to Cleburne High School. I did go, but my elementary years were spent at Santa Fe High School, Santa Fe Elementary, which is on the east side of Cleburne. And even though integration was the policy, segregation was the practice. All of my classmates were black and brown, and whites who didn't reach a certain financial
Well, I'm going
level
to ask you to repeat that again. I like that. Integration.
was the policy,
Uh-huh.
but segregation was the practice.
And that's even when the black school was closed.
Even when it was closed.
And all blacks now were going to the all white, previously all
Well, I'm
white.
speaking strictly in the terms of my elementary school.
Oh, okay.
And it may have just been a byproduct of where everybody lived. It was the closest school in the neighborhood. Blacks and browns stayed on that side of town, and that's kind of how it was. But during my high school years, blacks and whites and every other race that was in the city attended the Cleveland High School.
All right. Now that is really, really interesting in that the spiritual aspect you mentioned. You didn't go to an all black high school, but you feel that you did because of the spiritual connection for your mother and father having attended there.
Yes, ma'am. Not only my mother and father, but the other people in the neighborhood, my extended family, uncles and aunts, we all kind of understood that Booker T was our proving ground. We lived on the east side of Cleveland, like I said, where it was predominantly black. And that sense of pride and that integrity that was instilled at Booker T was taught in my home.
My goodness.
That's what I feel
So
about
you
it.
picked it up from there.
Picked it up, yes, ma'am.
And now, Reverend Warren, so this project, the Legacy of East Cleburne, what are some of the, or who are some of the persons? Well, I should ask you this first. What was the point? What were you trying to do in starting that project?
My my quest was to let the people, the citizens in Cleveland, know that in spite of how we were treated in terms of educational material, our teachers not being paid the same salary as their counterparts, the white teachers. That only happened in 1944 when the Gilmer-Aiken bill was passed. Black teachers were paid all over the state of Texas the same salaries that white teachers were being paid. But as I said a moment ago, we had some of the best instructors ever. And reason being is because that was the only job they could get after they came out of college. One of the principals, Heman Sweat, he later resigned from Booker T, being the principal at Booker T, and applied to attend law school at the University of Texas.
Boy, that's interesting.
And
Now,
they denied him. They wouldn't let him
yes.
in.
Yeah, and when we come
Third-
back from our break, we're going to talk more about him because he changed the whole United States.
That's right.
And we'll talk more about your experience at Cleburne High School. So, right after the break, we'll be back with more from the Legacy of East Cleburne and Retrain Your Thinking. All right, guys. Welcome back to Retrain Your Thinking with Pastor Johnny. I'm talking today to the Warrens, father and son combo. Boy, and they're both so interesting. Now, Reverend Warren, when we left the last segment, you were talking about Heman Sweat. I think that's how his name is.
Yes, Heman
pronounced.
Sweat.
Yes, from a small town, Cleburne, doing great things. Tell us more about that.
He was the principal of Booker T. Washington, and he resigned to attend law school. And he made an application for the University of Texas and was denied. Thurgood Marshall came and defended him in that case, and it eventually went to the Supreme Court where they won, and he became an attorney. And that's the caliber of individuals we had as instructors at Booker T. Washington High School. Another thing I'd like to say about it, There was no entrance exam at Booker T. And when I graduated in 1958, there was no exit exam. That's one of the social constructs that they have developed during this day and time. The honors system and other students being not being in that particular program for specific reasons. That's just another area of social construction, and separating kids.
From yeah. Now the
Yeah,
case that went to the Supreme Court, what was it called and what was the effect of it?
I'm not sure. It was just Heman Sweat versus the president of the University of Texas at that time.
All right.
And I don't remember what that name was, but then
Okay.
you can go online and pick
And
that up.
yes, well, did
Yeah.
it become known as the case of separate but equal? Is that the one that was the
No,
separate?
no,
That was not
no, it
separate
was
but
not
equal.
that. No, it was
All
not
right.
that
Okay.
case.
All right. There was one very similar to that.
Yes.
The separate but equal, but it did. He did open the door
Yes.
for all students who wanted to, black or white,
Yeah.
to attend the University of Texas
Yes.
Law School. Wonderful. Okay.
Another individual that that was from Cleburne, Luther Prince Jr. He graduated and went to Alabama, Tuskegee, and there he majored in physics and graduated, and he got his master's and his doctorate degree from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he
Okay.
later
MIT.
became the vice president of Honeywell engineering firm. You remember the temperature controls that you used to see on the walls and building Honeywell?
Yes. I think
He
there was
was.
a big Honeywell out
That's
near
right.
Denton or Louisville,
Yeah, he was
somewhere.
vice president and part owner of that.
Yes.
Later on, he left that company and formed his own company, and he designed the controls of the X-15 rocket that flew higher than any other plane at that particular time. Right there out of Cleveland, he lived at 413 North Brazos Street in Cleveland,
In
Texas.
Cleveland, Texas.
Those are the kind of people
Yes.
that we had at Booker T when the notion was no education was occurring.
Yes.
You know.
On the side of town
Yes,
where blacks lived,
That's
which
right.
was called East Cleburne. Well, X, tell me a little bit about your experience not going to Booker T, but being a citizen or a member or a part of East Cleburne. You lived in East Cleburne, parents in East Cleburne, but you had to go to Cleburne High School.
Well, in East Cleburne, we had a lot of competition. Competition academically, competition in sports. So when we got to Cleburne High School, the competition pieces of it, the being able to get along with other people in spite of, was easier for us to manage, I think. And I say us, I'm speaking primarily of the people who lived in my home. Now, I don't want to speak for other people, including those who lived in my home, and I'll speak for myself. But I found it easier for me to manage some of those struggles where other people just couldn't manage them as well.
That's great. And you're one of those success stories out of East Cleburne, and we're really hoping that this segment will show others and inspire others to look at your small communities, let folks know about the history of people. So you're one of the success stories. You went on to the NFL. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, you use the word success, and I think of it as being a relative term. I think my success is still being built. I did play in the NFL, but for a very, very, very short time. I would like to think that it's because of what I did, but it really wasn't. I was thrust in very fortunate situations over and over and over again, not by my own doing. So I was just fortunate, and I was there only for less than a year during the strike of 1987. But I would like to think that some of the struggles that we went through in 1987 in the NFL build on what's happening in the NFL right now.
Yes, yes. Well, one of the things we know that's happening is a difference in the diagnosis of black players and white players when it comes to injuries of the cranial injuries or whatever they're calling that, concussions.
Concussion
Yes.
protocols.
How does that? What do you feel about that? How does that?
Well, without having a great amount of information about it, I can say this: that in 1987, the league and the union were all in flux, which was one of the strikes from 80, I think they had one in 82 and one in 87, and the concussion protocol was pieces of that, fair and equitable profit sharing between the owners and the players were part of it. Currently, the concussion protocol, I believe, has been viewed as different between black and white players. And I think if that's the facts, then that is unfair. I'm sure that people with greater minds than mine are addressing the issue. So the concussion protocols are important. There have been several class action lawsuits, some of which I've been a part of, some of which I've been a beneficiary of, that help make things better for all the players.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Well, we're really hoping that that will come out equitable,
yes.
and that provisions will be made for the black players who were hit and knocked around just as much as the white players.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
right now, we're looking at the thing of the old idea of the brains of black people not being the same as brains of whites, and so therefore it's easier to discriminate.
Yes, ma'am. And I think in some circles, the old way of implicit bias
Yes.
is always in play, and that is an American thing and not just an NFL thing. And we as human beings have to really look beyond who we are and who we serve as our real goal.
All right, that sounds really good, and I love that. Who we are and who we serve. Well, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we'll be talking again about the legacy of East Cleburne. We'll see you in a few. All right.
All right.
That sounds good. Welcome back to Retrain Your Thinking with Pastor Johnny. Now, I've been talking to a father and son duo, the Warrens, Reverend John Warren, Xavier Warren. And we're going to just talk just a little bit again about the Legacy of East Cleburne series, a project. And I have here a newspaper, X, that you're shown as you presented and talked about your experience, which you've already shared with us, a lot of your experience in the in East Cleburne, growing up in East Cleburne, and that legacy. So as we talk more about that, who are some of the that you remember, some of your colleagues, your maybe even mentors, but particularly your colleagues who have also grown up in this little small area? Reverend Warren refers to it as across the tracks, and a lot of cities we have that across the tracks. But very little recognition has been given to them for the outstanding work they've done.
Pastor Johnny, I can start trying to name names. However, my memory does have a tendency to slip away from me, and I don't want to leave anybody out.
Right.
I will put a blanket on just about everybody that was older than me, especially those of my parents' age, that played a pivotal role in who I am and how I came up. I often think of, I work in a public school system, and I often ask people, I know that you can read, but how do you know how to read? And people don't really have that answer. And my answer always is that you know your ABCs. So that we learn something as simple as the ABCs, and we forget how important those things are, and we know how to read. So when I use that as a base point of who we are, I am who I am, not because of me necessarily, but because of who my family was, who are the influences in my city, who my God is, and maybe not that order, maybe the other way around, who my God is, and then my family.
Yes.
And those are the things that I kind of touch on when I remember people and things that I grew up with.
That is wonderful. Teaching sociology in a community college, I teach that a lot, that it's socialization that makes you who you are, that your thoughts, your reactions, your actions are all a part of your God, your family, your community. So that's really, really important. Now, you said you work in a local school. How can we get in touch with you if there's someone who wants to know more?
Okay, you can reach me by email, and my email address is xavierwarren47 at icloud.com. That's XavierWarren 47 at icloud.com.
Sounds great. And Reverend Warren, tell us again how we can get in touch with you.
My full name, John Warren, 1660 at att.net.
All right. Very good. And we can also find you on the
Yeah,
City
on the
of Cleburne.
City of Cleburne website.
Very
also.
good. Very good.
Just click on that and then click on government,
All right.
and you'll find a reasonable facsimile of
Yeah.
me.
All right.
And
All right.
also a bio.
All right. Very good. Now, Reverend Warren, continue telling us about, you've mentioned two of the members that were persons highlighted in the series, The Legacy of East Cleburne. Who else can you think of that you
Well,
can tell us about?
there were just several of them. Jay Brazel was one of them, and he went on to finish college at Texas College in Tyler, Texas, and he was a pitcher in the local baseball team, Cleveland Eagles baseball team, and he was drafted in the National Baseball League, played there for a short while, and he ended up being a teacher in Vernon, Texas. And he was very successful out there in Vernon in bringing the races together, helping them to understand one another. And when he passed away, they named one of the parks there in Vernon after him. And about, I believe, we've had our semi-pro baseball team in Cleveland now, the Railroaders, I believe, about 4 or 5 years,
2017.
2017.
Okay.
And I was able to convince the city council to give that address of that baseball place after him, J. Brazel Boulevard.
All right. And now he actually played for what was called the Old Negro Baseball League. Is that right?
No, he didn't play with the Old Negro.
He didn't play with them.
But we had several people there in Cleveland who did play with the Old
right.
Negro.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, X's grandfather played with the Old Negro.
All right.
Leroy Johnson.
Yes.
My wife's father played with him.
Wow.
Yeah, and Jay Brazel's uncle, Aaron Maxwell, played with him.
All right.
Yeah.
And we know that Old Negro League was because blacks were not allowed until Jackie Robinson, I think, integrated the whole thing.
That's right.
We're not allowed to play with whites.
That's right.
Weren't even allowed to play against each other. But that eventually dissolved, like so many other racial issues we're praying will dissolve. Well, that is, so the J. Brazel Parkway, you say?
J. Brazel Boulevard is the address of the Railroaders facility.
All right.
They're in Cleveland, Texas. Yeah.
All right. That sounds really, really good.
Yeah. We're real proud of that.
Yes, yes. Any other highlights?
Well, you mentioned a moment ago the importance of our history. And I've heard it said, old cliche says, if the lion doesn't tell his story, the hunter always wins. And so history is very vital
Yes.
to us.
If the lion if the lion doesn't
Doesn't
tell
tell
his
his story.
story,
The hunter
the
always
hunter
wins.
always wins.
That's right.
Now I love that. That really brings out the importance of this thing called critical race theory. That is really all about telling the story from both sides. And we've just gotten all twisted about it changing history. It's not changing history. There's a group of people called rewriting, RIGHT, rewriting history and including it. So, X, you work, you said, in is it a public school?
Public schools.
Okay. Middle school, high school, elementary?
I work for the entire district, so I serve all the elementaries and all the middle and high schools.
Okay. So, what do you see as some issues that we most likely need to pay attention to, or some things we could maybe become more conscious of?
And that question is a Pandora's box.
Yes, it
and once
is.
you open that box, who
Yes.
knows what's going to fly out of it.
Yes.
But I like to think back to what are the basics. We need parents as partners. We need teachers who have empathy. We need to get out of the old mental confines of punishment versus rehabilitative and restorative. And so those are the pieces that we're really looking at. The district I worked in, we have a conscious effort to combat an issue called significant disproportionality when it comes to discipline for Black and brown students.
Wow.
And it's not just unique to our district. It's common all across the state and the country, and it's called something different in other industries, but it's still the same kind of thing.
Concept.
So what we want to try to do in the school district is be equitable, teach students not only just to be smart in mind, but smart in moral. We can always teach you to read, but can we teach you to have integrity? Yes. And those are the more important pieces to me. And my position allows me the latitude to be more restorative and more about what's the correct thing with your moral and your having integrity versus knowing your 1, 2, 3s and your ABCs.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Well, this has been another great episode and discussion with Reverend John Warren and his son, Xavier Warren. And we want you to join us again for Retrain Your Thinking with Pastor Johnny. And remember, don't just think about it, be about it. We'll see you next time.
Amen.
All right, that was good.
Amen.
I wanted to
Amen.
ask you again.